Hello, my name is Georgie. I live in London and this is my PMR story. It all began back in the first lockdown, 2020, a time when the world went a bit mad. At the time I was a 57-year-old primary school teacher attempting to teach a class of 4 and 5-year-olds online. One of the most stressful things I've ever tried to do. I began to feel unwell, tired, achy, stiff, nothing very tangible, just I didn't feel right. I had a bilateral tendonitis in my Achilles that had no real explanation, slightly weird symptoms that were hard to pin down. I'd previously had some back problems and frozen shoulders, so it was difficult not to assume all of this was a sort of musculoskeletal thing. But I'm married to an osteopath, luckily for me, so I had some in-house expertise, and it was clear I didn't respond to any osteopathic treatment and I was getting worse. So several months into that period, I had some blood tests done to see if we could find out anything from that, but they showed absolutely nothing. Eventually I saw a GP, privately actually, because it was impossible to actually do anything other than speak to somebody on the phone, and I wanted to be seen in person. But she suggested I needed some back surgery, something that the MRI scans I had, didn't suggest that at all. So that didn't get me anywhere. More time went by. I went back to my NHS GP, only on the telephone. You couldn't see anybody, but she did send me for some more blood tests. We discussed whether any of this could be menopause linked, given that there are 1,001 symptoms that could be explained by menopause. She thought that could be a possibility, and I did try some HRT for a while, which didn't really make very much difference. Fortunately, at the same time, she did refer me to a rheumatologist, and the blood test did come back showing some inflammatory markers raised. So within about 6 weeks, I managed to see a rheumatologist who took a lot of time to really explore what was going on, because it's clear that there was a slightly atypical presentation, although PMR had been suggested along the road already. In the end, she felt on balance that that was the diagnosis and put me on steroids. She said, "You'll know within a few days whether we've made the right diagnosis." So I started the prednisolone, and by the time I did begin that treatment, I was really in a bad way. I could hardly walk up the stairs. I couldn't drive the car. I had pain going all the way up my rib cage and was having difficulty breathing. They sent me for lung x-rays to check there was nothing untoward going on. And within a couple of hours of taking the prednisolone, those symptoms had begun to go. And within 2 weeks, I was completely symptom-free. So it clearly was the correct diagnosis. I was able to work. I felt quite manic, actually. My energy levels were very high, but I didn't feel normal. I didn't feel like myself. And I didn't like the person that it made me into. I'm normally quite placid and unconfrontational, and this was a very different person. So I was keen to taper and get off of the medication in line with their instructions, but as fast as I could. And I did that over the course of the next few months. The hospital discharged me. The GP wasn't around or interested. So I kind of managed it myself in that time. And about 10 or 11 months after I'd started it, I had finished the course of medication and I felt a lot better. Not 100%, but I was coping. And time went by, and we're into the sort of summer of 2022 now, and went back to a new academic year in that September. And by the end of that year, I'd really deteriorated again. I had more blood tests, but they showed nothing. They were completely normal, and it was confusing. I felt like I was a fraud, like I must be making it up. But I really was struggling. I was really struggling to do my job. I saw another practitioner who said I had fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome, but that didn't sit entirely comfortably with me. I don't know, it didn't feel right. Eventually I gave in. I'd been someone who'd never taken a day off work practically in 30 years, and I went on sick leave because I really couldn't function. And I found another rheumatologist who I went to see privately because I was quite desperate. And he took one look at me and said, "This is PMR. It has come back, it's prone to doing that, and you need to go back on the prednisolone." He said it was very common for it not to show up in any blood tests. It was helpful if it did, but it wasn't necessarily the case that it would show up. So I was back on the tablets. He knew I was keen not to take them for too long. They really didn't agree with me, sort of psychologically. And I tapered them down with his advice relatively quickly. By October of 2023, I had stopped taking the medication, and I did feel quite a bit better. In addition, I took early retirement from my job, and I began to really look after myself. The recovery wasn't immediate, but by Christmas, New Year 2024, I was beginning to feel a bit more like myself. And so much so that I've recently done a 75-mile stretch walking the Cotswold Way. And I guess this is the sign that I am beginning to get back to the person that I was. I don't know if I'm out of the woods completely, but I'm not on any medication and I'm managing to function. And I've been really lucky because my husband supported the decision for me to give up work, and that has made a huge difference to me. So anyway, that really is where I'm at this point in time. So I hope that can inspire some hope for anyone who's in the depths of really suffering at the moment, because I do remember only too well what that was like. Thanks for listening.